streaming. I don't think my thing is streaming. I think my thing was messed up. My thing is streaming. Oh god, don't tell me that my videos didn't save. Oh Jesus Christ. I think I've been here I think I made a video for an hour and it did not save because my streaming was being glitchy. Oh my goodness. So as you can see here, I took the time to explain how to make a character sheet, and I followed along with the player's handbook, but it didn't record. So I'm going to try to make it as brief as possible so that we can hurry up and get this done. I've been at it for an hour. So I'm trying to help my friend make a character for D&D. Okay, because I am a DM and he's a first time player, he seems to enjoy it, and I want to help him out. Alright, so let's do this. First thing you want to do is pick a race, pick a class, and the background. Those are the three most important things for character creation. So then you're like, whoa, what does this do? What does that do? Right? Okay, the reason I say that is because the introduction doesn't really tell you that backgrounds are so important, but they are, because not only do backgrounds give you a special feature, but they determine if you gain extra skills or languages or abilities. So first things first is you need a Dungeons and Dragons sheet or an app or a piece of paper so you can write down stuff. At the end of your player's handbook, you can print it out. You can get free sheets on the internet and print them out. So print yourself out one so you can start writing things down. We're going to go to what is it? Page 111. No, we're going to go to page 113. So this is going to be your first step. Page 113. You can go to page 113. It says generate your character's 6 ability scores. Normally, what you do is you use dice. And it kind of tells you how to do it. And then you figure it out. But we don't use dice. We use this standard ability score. Or standard ability, the standard array is what we call it. Right? And I have put it in here. And it looks like some numbers are off. But that is because I have already finished this character. And when you take a race, you bump up this score. So that's why you want to have this score first before you proceed to anything else. Even though during character generation they tell you to pick a race first and pick a class, no, you want to have your ability scores and write them down first before you do anything else, right? And usually that's how it works whenever you start a game with a DM. So we took the ability scores, we put them in here, and then the ability scores are right here, and then we figured out what our modifier becomes. So our modifier is the number you add to your dice when you roll it. So let's say I roll a d20, I get to add +3 if the DM says, okay, this is a strength check or some shit, or roll a straight strength. It'd be d20 +3. So how did I find this number? Easy. I took the ability score, I went to this chart, and I found my number, and then I looked at the modifier. So the way it works is every even number your modifier changes. So even if you have let's say you have a modifier of 10, which is a 0. If you have an 11, it's still 0. But if it's a 12, then it goes up. And that's how it's going. That's just the formula for it. Every even number goes up. So there's some stats that I have odd numbers, and that's kind of why like humans are really good. Sometimes you'll roll and have a lot of odd numbers, and you can just get a +1 and everything, and have a better character because it bumps up everything. But enough of that. You figure out your number. You put your modifier in the big square, and then we're gonna go to your race, which in this case is going to be half orc, and go down. We're going to go to half orc traits, and then it tells you your ability score increases by these numbers. So this is the large number, this isn't the modifier. Alright, so when it says score, that's the number that determines your modifier. So you don't get to add +2 to this number up here. You get to add +2 to the number in the little squares. So I had put 15 here. I added +2. So that bumped it up to a 17, which it made my modifier go up to 3. And then I had put a 14 in Constitution. And being a half orc gives me a 1. So then I bumped that up to a +2. Right? And that's why I'm saying get your standard array numbers or your point by, because some people do point by, and then that makes you have different higher tier characters that are really even. Do this number first, because these numbers determine every other number, whereas picking a race, picking a class is just fluff. These are really important. Alright, and you can come in here and change them. So for example, I know that I'd get a 1 in Constitution, right? And so that means my Constitution was 14. I'm like, oh, okay. So that means I could take this 13, put it up here, have a 14 there instead of a 15, which would give me a +2. And even though I have a 15 in here, I can have a +2 here because I'm bumping up another number. And this is a 14, so I could drop the 14 down to charisma, and then I could have a 14 in charisma and bump my charisma up to 2. Oh, okay. Now that makes sense. That's why I want to have certain races, because certain races would allow you to juggle your numbers around, or to have a really high number in a certain score, or even have the ability to go change your score to another spot so you can have a more rounded off character. Alright, so that's what I'm going to do. So I know I'm going to have at least, I know that this would be a 14, right? Because my Constitution went up by 1. Right, so I would have a 14 and a 13, and I'm like, okay, I get to add 1. Let me put the 14 down here. My charisma would now be +2. Let me put the 13 up here, which would put my Constitution at +1. But then my ability score increases for being a half orc by 1. So then my Constitution would be 14. And my Constitution would be at +2. So you see, just by doing a little moving around, I now have a +2 in charisma, whereas earlier I only had a +1. And because this was odd, it really wasn't affecting me too much on character creation, right? So I could have also had a 15, since this was +2, right? This would have been a 15, then that would have bumped it down to +2, and so this would have been a 13, right? Yeah, that would have been a 13, which would have reduced that to +1, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, how can I do this? Okay, I'm gonna put the 13 up on strength, 13. I'm gonna drop the 15 to Constitution, 15, and then I get to add 2 because I'm a half orc, so that would make that 15. What a 13, it would have been a 10 to 12 is 0, 12 to 2. Oh, that would have actually made my strength a +0, because that would have been Now that would have made my strength a +1 because that would have been a 13. Now I get to add 2. So I have a +2 in strength. And then I drop my 15 to constitution. I get to add 1. So that would mean my constitution would be 16. So now my constitution went from a +1 all the way to a +3. So another easy way to find the formula for this number is the big number, your ability score, minus 10 divided by 2. And that determines your modifier. So 16 minus 10 is 6. Divided by 2 is 3. And that's where I get that number. So as you can see, I did a little bit of movement. And I now have a better rounded off character than I had when I started. But again, is that the type of character you want to be? Probably not. You probably want to have a lot of strength. You probably want to have that 17 right at the start. And you probably want to have the ability to get to like 20 strength, right? So let's just say this would have been a 14, right? And that would have been a 13. So I'm just gonna put, right, my constitution went up by 1, right? Yeah. So let's put our 14 back up here. Let's put our 13 back down there. 13. Alright, then there would be a 14 plus 2, which would make this a 16. Which would bump this up to plus 3, right? Because that would have been 15. No, that would have been... This was a 15. This was a 15 because this one would have been a 16, right? Yeah, this was a 15. 15 plus 2 is 17. 17. So I'm still at plus 3, but I'm at 17 now, which makes me closer to 20. And then my constitution was 14. And I get to add 1 to that, which would turn this number into 15. And I still have only a plus 2. So, I could switch it out, and even though the numbers were switched out, it was still plus 3 down here and plus 2 down here. This number is now at 17, this number is now at 15, which would mean when I get to level 4, instead of taking the feat, I could just take the ASI and increase these and this by 1, and that would bump that up to 18, I'd have a plus 4, bump that up to 16, I'd have a plus 3. Alright? And so, player characters are almost always considered medium. That's where your size gets. That means you take over a 5 foot square. Your speed is 30, so you have a spot for speed. And then, usually after speed, you have like certain traits. So what you want to do is just, copy it. And then paste it over here, which is what I had done. And then you're like, okay, I have dark vision. Okay, I want to remember that. Boom. What does exactly dark vision do? I write it down. So then it says medicine. You gain proficiency in the intimidation skills. Like, oh, okay. So what does that mean? So on your sheet, when you gain proficiency in something, you just click this bubble or you're filling the bubble. That means that you get to add this number. And this number changes. It goes up as you level up. Right? All right. So I did that. Now I'll go to the next one. It says relentless endurance. Okay. Oh man, that sounds cool. How am I going to remember that? Copy and paste it or write it down. And it says, oh, savage attacker. Okay, that's another extra thing that I can do. Okay, copy and paste it and write it down. Languages. Okay, so I know common and orc. Oh, there's a square right here. Languages. Alright, put common, orc. And then I'm going to go down and it turns into seafood. Okay, I'm done figuring this out. So then I go to paladin, right? Next step, paladin. Oh, it talks about paladin. That's cool. Look, a half orc paladin's even picture. That's cool. What is this chart? Okay, this chart tells you what you gain and what you unlock when you reach a certain level. So we're going to be level 1. Okay, first level, go to the right. Proficiency bonus, +2. Oh, what the fuck does that mean? Let me go to my sheet. Oh, there's a box right here. It says proficiency bonus. I just put, oh, this says +2. I'll put a +2 there. Features. Oh, what are features? Oh, I get divine sense and lay on hands. What the fuck does that mean? What is that? Shit, let me go down this piece of paper. Let me go down the book. Okay, page 84 of the player's handbook says divine sense in text. Oh, okay, I get to see if something's undead or celestial or something. That's cool. Let me copy that down. Let me paste it somewhere over here, or write it down so I can remember it. And then I also learned lay on hands. Oh, what does lay on hands do? Oh, lay on hands lets me like heal myself or take a disease off. Oh man, I need to know that. So you copy that, you paste it down over here, and now you keep going to the right. Oh, I don't learn any spells. I don't get any spells till I'm level 2. Damn. Man, I can't wait to get to level 2, you know, so I can start using my spells. So I'm like, oh, what kind of spells would I get? And, you know, you just keep reading down and be like, oh, I learned Divine Smite at level 2. That's awesome. What the fuck is Divine Smite? I'm going to have to read that and all this other shit, right? Alright, so you finally copied your feats down. And I went over class features specifically because I'm trying to go from top down. So read what it says, go down, write it down. Go to the next one. Read what it says, go down, write it down. Keep going down. Class features. Oh, okay, what's that? Okay. Hit points, hit dice. 1d10 per paladin level. I need to remember that. Oh, look, it says hit die right here. 1d10 per paladin level. I'm only paladin 1. Oh, okay, so then I put 1d10 there. What the fuck does that mean? I can roll a d10 to heal when I'm taking a short rest. Oh, but how many hit points do I have? I have no idea. Oh, hit points at first level. It says it right underneath it. Oh, shit. Maybe I should have read that. It says 10 plus your constitution modifier. What the fuck's constitution modifier? Oh, I really have it written down here because I did that before I picked my race and my fucking class instead of what the book told me. Oh, so that's +2. Okay, so I'm level 1 and my first level... I took this paladin at my first level, so that means I get this ability here. So it's 10 plus my constitution. Okay, so my total hit points at level 1 are 12. And that's kind of why constitution matters, because if you would have had a 16 here, if you would have put your 15 here, you would have got +1 for being the half orc. You would have turned to 16. At first level, you would have had 13 instead of 12. So like, what am I supposed to do once I level up? Okay, I could just roll a d10, and then I could add my constitution, and that would determine my total hit points. Yeah, but we don't play with rolling the hit die, so you're going to take the number in the parentheses, which is going to be 8 plus 2, which at level 2 would mean you get, 6 plus 2, which at level 2 would mean you get 8 total. So your hit points would increase by 8, so 12 plus 8 equals 20. And then at level 3, you'd add another 8, which would equal 28, etc., etc. I find that a lot easier than having to track people's dice and rolling people's dice. Alright, so I'm like, okay, what else do I have? Okay, so I got the hit points. Oh, I have proficiencies. It says armor, all shields. I need to know that. So other proficiencies. Oh, this would be a good place to put it. Copy it, paste it, remember what it says. Okay, so I have weapons. Okay, simple on weapons. Okay, copy it, paste it. I don't have any tools. Damn. Oh well. Saving throws. Oh, where does saving throws go? Okay, these are my saving throws. So then it says I'm proficient in that. So I remember that proficiency means bubbling it in, or marking it, taking the checkpoint. Well, what the fuck was proficiency again? Oh, that just means I get to add my proficiency bonus, which is determined by my level because it changes as I level up. Oh, so that means I get better and better at certain things as I level up, whereas the other things really don't change. Oh, so that's what proficiency means. It means I get better and better at a certain thing. So being able to save myself if I get charmed, or if I get try to dominate, I would be better. So you better learn not to pick on paladins, not to try to dominate them, because eventually I'm going to have a high save and you're going to fail over and over. Okay, so it says I have more skills. Okay, so I can choose 2 from the list, and as a half orc, I automatically gained proficiency in intimidation because I'm a menacing half orc. So it says intimidation's in the list. Okay, I don't have to pick that because I already got it, right? Oh, let's see, what other skills what other skills should I pick? Oh, okay. So normally you would just pick a skill and just keep going, right? But what I'm trying to tell you is that you need to pick your background and have all that information ready for you, because when you get to skills, your background is going to affect it. So Robert the half-orc's background is Outlander. So where's my background? Okay, chapter 4 backgrounds. Oh, okay, backgrounds right here. And then it tells you, like, backgrounds give you proficiencies, give you languages, give you extra equipment. You're like, oh shit, that's actually pretty strong. And then we allow the customizing a background variant rule, or whatever it is, which means you have to pick a background to take the feature from it, because every background has a certain feature that lets you do something unique, but you can change your proficiency or your language, right? So it's okay, to customize a background, you can replace one feature with any other one. So you don't get to make new features. You can just replace it with the features that are already made. What else? I can choose any 2 skills. Oh, that means that I could just pick any 2 skills that I want. So if I were to pick my paladin skills already, then I would come over here and I'd be like, oh, I already picked these skills. Damn, I wish I would have known. Let me erase it. Let me fix that. And then it says, what else? And I can choose either 2 tool proficiencies or languages. So I can either pick 2 tools, 2 languages, or 1 tool, 1 language. Oh, that sounds good. I mean, I could gain the tool proficiency if I pick a certain background, if I customize my background, where else I wouldn't get it any other way. Okay, what else does it say? You can either use equipment or spend coin on the gear. The only feature is that we don't do is rolling for gear. So you have to take the gear from your background. So you take the gear from your background and the feat from your background. The only thing you're allowed to customize are, your skills, and if you learn another language or another tool. All right. So anyways, that was that intro. But I know that I picked the Outlander background, so let's find Outlander. Where's Outlander? Okay, entertainer, yada yada. Oh, rustic hospitality for folk hero. That sounds cool. I might want to read that. Oh, guild artisan. That's neat. I could be a guild artisan. Hermit. Who would want to be a hermit? That sounds whack, do I want to be a noble? That sounds cool. I could be a noble paladin. Oh, I might be into that. Maybe my DM will allow me to change it. Oh, okay. Let me double check what Outlander does. Oh, Outlander, okay. So as an Outlander, I'd gain proficiencies in athletics and survival. Oh, you know what? As a paladin, I would have gained proficiency. I could have chose to gain athletics. So that means that my list from the ones that I get from paladin are even shorter, right? Because you can't change these, or you're only set to have 2. Whereas the other ones, they give you a choice from a limited array. Whereas in the background, you can change it to any one as long as it makes sense, right? So what I had let Robert the half-orc do is change his athletics here to animal handling and have survival. So he's an outlander that's good with animals and survival, right? So I bubbled that in. And then he has a tool proficiency, but it's a musical instrument. And Robert the half-orc chose the flute. And then I learned one extra language, which I don't remember what Robert the half-orc learned. I just put goblin. And then I got equipment. So I typed out all the equipment that I had so I can remember. And then I got 10 gold pieces. So that's where your gold comes from. A lot of people, some people are just like roll for gold and then show up. And not, you're not rolling. You're not showing up with 120 gold pieces, some bombs, and chain fucking plate mail, half plate at level 1. No. That's not going to work. I will freaking magic missile you from 240 feet away over and over until you die. Because that's just straight up cheating. All right, so I wrote everything down, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Okay, so what kind of background could I role play as? Oh, I don't really like this. Maybe I'll talk to my DM and pick a, tell him kind of what my character wants to have. But pilgrim sounds cool, or tribal nomad, bounty hunter, or forester, that sounds cool. Like, maybe I could change it. All right, so I picked like a little theme. So now it says feature wander. Oh, this is the features that that's what I wanted to pick. Well, I want to be an outlander. Okay, because your backgrounds give you a certain feature and those really don't change, right? So I'm like, okay, so this lets me remember the terrain and lets me feed me and up to 5 other people without struggling. Normally when you want to feed somebody, you have to roll a survival check, and sometimes you roll really poorly and you can only get enough food for one person, and a couple other people start starving, and you can't do it. Like, I don't really let people roll for food unless they're proficient in survival and all this and that. So you would just straight up avoid all that hassle. Every morning you need food for your party, you can just say, DM, I'm going to go out and find food for my party, and then I determine if you could find food, if this is an environment, and you do it. Whereas otherwise it would be a pain. Okay, roll your d20. Okay, make a survival check. Okay, you failed horribly. Oh, you get lost, etc. And then like, oh, I can remember this area because we just walked by here, so we don't get lost as much. So if you ever want to use it, you just say, can I use my background feature? And then as a DM, I'd say, what background feature do you want to use? What's your background feature? And then you say wander. And like, okay, what does it do? And then you tell me what it is. So you want to write it down, put it on a piece of paper, and so that you can remember it for now until you have it remembered in the back of your head. So we took that feature, put it down here, and then you would keep going. And this is where you get your personality, your ideas, your bond, your flaw. So then I just picked a couple of them, put them over here. You can either roll to make it random, or you can choose. You technically can make up your own, but I always tell people just to pick from the book. Just stick to the book. We're just going to play from the book for now. And once we start having an actual routine, then you can change it, ask me to change it, etc. Alright, so if you remember correctly, the reason we came here was because we were trying to do our skills. So backgrounds let you change skills. So now I have picked my skills, have my items, have my gold. I'm going back to Paladin, going to skills, and if I remember correctly, I got menacing, which gave me intimidation. So there's intimidation. I don't need that. I also have survival from being an outlander, which is not on my list. I'm glad I have that. And I could have been in athletics and survival, which would have knocked athletics off the list. But I chose to take animal handling and replace athletics. So I took animal handling from the outlander. So now I have to pick 2 more, right? And so as a paladin, you always mainly focus on strength and charisma. And these other ones are in case you have a higher wisdom and you want to balance out your character or whatever. So I would have just gone with athletics. Picked athletics as my first paladin skill. And since intimidation and persuasion are both charisma checks, I can check right here and it says it in the square. I would have either done athletics and picked an intimidation, or athletics and picked the persuasion, depends on how I want to run my character. But as a half orc, you already learned intimidation, so I would have taken the persuasion so I could have had a bonus to persuasion, and that way I could have a higher number in these little squares, right? Medicine and religion and insight are all wisdom based, which if you had a high wisdom, it would help you out. Some people are like cleric paladins or whatever. So we are done with this entire block, right? Let's go down. So as a background, we got certain items. I started writing them here, and now I'm at my paladin equipment, and it tells me what I could choose. So I can either take a martial weapon and a shield, or 2 martial weapons, which we chose halberd and whip for 2 martial weapons. And then I also get 5 javelins or any simple melee weapon. So I took the javelins instead of a simple melee weapon. And I wrote it down. I wrote down the information that I needed for that weapon. And the information for that weapon is over here on page 149. There's a chart and it tells you exactly what it does. And you can type it in the list. Tells you the damage type. Right? And then last but not least, or not last but not least, but second to the bottom, you can either pick a Pris pack or an Explorer's pack. We took the Explorer's pack. So what exactly is in the Explorer's pack, you say? Oh shit, I don't really know. Let's try to find it. Let's see. Starting equipment. That tells me my chainmail. Oh, I need to come back to that list soon. Yes. Oh, it says adventuring gear right here. Sorry, I forgot. Let's go down. Oh, look, in this green square on page 151, it tells you about your packs. We took the Explorer's pack. So we have all these items. So I just copied and pasted all those items, right? Let's go back to our paladin. Come down. Let's see what else. We have chainmail and a holy symbol. Oh, I found the chainmail down here. Let's see what it does. Okay, on page 145, there's a square that tells you what exactly everything does. So let's go to chainmail. I write it down that I have chainmail. Right, I go to the right. It says armor class 16. Armor class 16. Oh, look, there's a square up here that tells me my armor class. Armor class means I have to roll on the d20 and meet or beat to hit. And then it says strength 13. What the fuck? Well, we have strength 17, so that's higher than 13. But what does that mean? Strength 13 means that you have to have a minimum of a 13 to carry the chainmail. If you had a 12, you would have half movement. So your total movement is 30, and if you had a 12 in strength, your total movement would be 15. And then it says disadvantage on stealth. So what does that mean? Well, when you wear heavy and clunky armor, when you try to make a stealth roll, you have disadvantage on every stealth roll you make, unless you have a feat or something, or whatever that nullifies that. So I'm like, oh, I have to remember that. So I write it down here on other proficiency languages. I say that my chainmail causes disadvantage on stealth rolls, so I can remember that every time I try to play. Alright, so my AC, oh man, okay, look, I can have chainmail at 16, and then I can put a chain shirt under that, and that would be 13 plus dex, so I would have like a fucking 30 something AC. So that's what I'm gonna do. No, you can't get a 30 something AC. One of these is going to be the only thing you use. You can only have one formula which is what they call whenever there's like a text like addition. You can only have one of them as your AC to calculate it. If you have a chain shirt and chainmail, you can either say, okay, I'm going to have my AC determined by my chain shirt. So that'd be 13 plus dex, which you can only have a max of 2. So maximum 15 on a chain shirt if you had enough dex. Or you can say your chainmail is determined in your AC. And the reason I say that is because some classes and some races have natural armor or unarmored defense or a feat that lets you use another formula to find your AC, or mage armor lets you change your AC, etc., etc. That's something I need to tell and I need to say. So yeah, like, okay, so let me go back to Paladin. Oh geez, I'm done for my level 1 Paladin, right? Oh wait, but how do I find my attack bonuses? Okay, so the way attack bonuses are is I'm proficient in simple weapons and martial weapons. That means I have proficiency, which I get to add my number. And because martial weapons are strength based, I want to say, I really couldn't find where it said. I really couldn't find where it actually told me what weapons do what. Let's go down. Equipment, coinage, armor, shields, heavy armor. Yes. Dawn, getting in armor. I'm trying to have people follow these rules. I just need to write them down so we can start role-playing that. Weapons grant proficiency. Your class grants proficiency, whether you favor longsword. Most common weapons. Okay, so by default, every weapon is going to be treated as a strength-based weapon, and I mean every melee weapon is going to be treated as a strength-based weapon, and every ranged weapon is going to be treated as a dexterity-based weapon. So that's where you get your which score you have to use. Every thrown weapon is either strength or dexterity, unless that thrown weapon is a dexterity weapon to begin with, which then means it's just going to be dexterity. I don't know, what does it say? Oh, sorry. If that thrown weapon has finesse on it, which in that case you can use strength or dexterity. And if a melee weapon has finesse on it, for example the whip, you can use strength or dexterity. So we have a +3. That means we start with a 3, and because we're proficient in that weapon we add 2, so our attack bonus is now +5. So to find out what your attack bonus is whatever modifier you use to attack with, which would be 3 plus, am I proficient with it? Yes. 2 would equal 5, right? And so that's how I find the number for the other one. Since finesse can be strength or dex, I don't want to use dex, I want to use strength. Proficient in martial weapons, get my bonus +5. Javelins are simple weapons, but they're thrown and I can use them with strength, so I have a +5 because I'm launching them, because I'm proficient in simple weapons. So that's 3 plus 2, that's a 5. And then my damage type, when you do damage, you get to add the dice that you rolled plus your modifier. So if I hit, I roll 1d10, and then I get to add 3 because I'm stabbing somebody using strength. And that's how I find that. And that's going to be how you find that with dex. If you hit somebody with an arrow, you're going to use your dex. So if you were to use a bow and arrow, it would be 0, and you're not proficient. I think bows and arrows are actually considered. Oh, you're not proficient in ranged weapons, right? So it would be 0 plus 0. So you'd roll. You wouldn't get proficiency bonus. So it'd just be a straight 0. So if you try to shoot somebody with a bow and arrow, you'd roll your d20. Let's say you rolled a 15. You wouldn't get to add any number to it. And if you hit, it would be whatever damage. For example, it would be what is a bow? They don't have a bow. Long bow. For example, it would be 1d8 plus 0, right? And they also give you a distance on some of these that are ranged, which would mean that you can safely throw a javelin at 30 feet, but you can launch a javelin wildly up to 120. And when I say that, you throw it at disadvantage. And it looks like basically everything's done on the first sheet. Just make sure you keep track of your abilities and whatever you get. Also, I'm gonna I still have a little bit more. Now I saw passive. Yeah, before we end, every skill has a word in parentheses. That's the number that determines. That's the skill. I mean, that's the ability that determines what number you put in the square before it. So acrobatics is dex based. So you'd add 0 because you have 0 dex. So animal handling is wisdom based. So that'd be +1. But since you're proficient in animal handling, you get to add the proficiency bonus to it, which is why took so long to do the bubbles. So now your animal handling is 3. Your arcana is intelligence based, and you have a negative, so you would subtract that number. Just because it's negative doesn't mean you don't do it to your number. And if you were using a weapon that gave you a negative modifier, so if you were using something that was intelligence based, you would also have a minus to whatever you were attacking with. So we're at athletics, and then the parentheses is STR, which is strength. I have a +3, and then I'm proficient in it, so I have a +5. So I'm up to a +5 when I'm making athletics rolls. That would make me pretty confident in thinking I could succeed in athletics rolls. And I put 0 in deception, but that's wrong. That's actually a 2 because it's charisma based, and intelligence is -1, wisdom is +1, charisma is +2. Oh, that's charisma is +2, and then I'd have a +2. So I had done it earlier and I only had a 1 charisma, but since I swapped them out a little bit, I have a higher charisma now, and it's something that you just have to learn how to do. And like, oh, I can flip these numbers, I can have another score. And that's why these scores affect how good you are, because now my intimidation is a 4 instead of a 3. And, investigation's intelligence, that's a negative. That's the wisdom. I put my wisdom number. I just keep going down. Wisdom is a 1. So performance is charisma, and so now my charisma is 2. Okay, so I'm proficient in persuasion, so it'd be 2 plus 2, which would equal 4 now. I have a minus there. I have a 0. I have a 0. My survival's wisdom. That's 1 plus 2. And I'm done with this. So what is passive wisdom? Passive wisdom is your passive perception, which is going to be the number here, plus 10. So that's how you find your passive. Passive abilities are something that I use, which is always 10 plus your skill number. So for example, your athletics is 5, right? There's something that you have to do, like I need to lift the box up off the ground. And I say, okay, roll an athletics check. and then you say, can I use my passive athletics? Well, I say, what is your passive athletics? My passive athletics is 15. Oh, okay, so the DC to lift up this heavy ass box was DC 15. So you would just be able to do it without having to roll, without worrying about failing. And then you're at level 1, so you'd be able to do medium athletic tasks without failing. Unless you're like in the middle of combat or you're distracted, etc., then I don't let you have passive checks. But that's kind of how that works. That's why you kind of like want to have high abilities, high scores, and I mean high skills, and your skills only increase because you have ability scores, etc. So that's kind of where the fun is, where you build your stronger character, right? So yeah, so that's, you basically have everything figured out, right? You know, you put your levels and stuff up here. Make sure you have your feats and stuff. And we have a level 1 character. So this is going to be the end of this video. I'm going to show you how to make how to do your level 2 character in a minute, and how to handle your spells, etc. So stay tuned, and I'll talk to you in a minute.